A few weeks ago, I started seeing alerts on some of the pages I follow for a Lights Out campaign. According to the birding sites behind the campaign, we were about to be underneath millions of birds who were migrating, mostly overnight, from their feeding grounds in the winter to their breeding grounds of summer. The messages were instructing us to, as much as possible, keep outdoor lights off overnight, as they seem to impact the migrating birds and draw them off course toward population centers where the birds would run into more danger. Learning that millions of birds were migrating over our heads at night completely captivated my imagination. I couldn't stop thinking about it. During a few weeks in May, there are so many birds flowing over our heads at one time that they are known in the bird world as a river of birds. A river of birds. This phenomena happened each year forever, all unbeknownst to me and most people I knew. Did y'all know that there's a river of birds every year flying overhead in the dark while we sleep? Maybe you all are more in tune with nature than I was, but I did not know that. And I began to look into bird migration a little bit more to understand this phenomena. I knew that birds migrated south to find more food in winter and then back north for safer breeding grounds in the summer. But I began to consider it through the lens of the birds. And let's look in specific at the Swainson's thrush, this bird whose melodic, spiraling song you can hear in the springtime. This bird is so well known in this region that, as I mentioned during the Ya moment, it was known to the native people as the salmonberry bird. The return of the fluting, spiraling song heralded the ripening of the area's first fruit after a long, cold, soggy winter. What a joyful pairing the song and fruit must have made when we didn't have access to grocery stores with abundant midwinter fruits. The salmonberry bird, or Swainson's thrush, would have traveled up to the Pacific Northwest all the way from Central and even South America. Matt, were we able to get a picture of a map? Do you have a picture of a map on this slide? I'll keep talking, and if we, yeah? It just blew my mind to really think about what this meant for these tiny birds. This tiny, ordinary-looking brown songbird lives most of its life down in South and Central America, feeding richly on the forest life that's there, and apparently feeding mostly on the red fruit that it favors, but none of the yellow fruit that it doesn't. It lives there in that warm climate. So there we have the map. And the blue is where they live in what is our winter and their regular feeding season. The yellow is where they migrate to, and the orange is where they move to go breeding. So when they are in our part of the country, they've migrated all that way down and up, and then will migrate again down. So it's down there, living its good life among the rich forest of Bolivia, eating those red fruits, having the time of its life, and one day, for reasons we do not understand, it feels not right anymore. Like something is tugging at its consciousness, its awareness. Like somehow there is a need for change, for upheaval. Even though there are still likely plenty of red fruits, plenty of forage, plenty of safety among the brush there. One day, something internal, external, intuition, instinct tells this little bird that it is time to change everything. And it launches itself into the night sky along with millions of its companions. There, the birds fly toward the north and west, at least our birds, which I learned are called the rust-back ones as opposed to the olive-back ones, which fly elsewhere, but we're talking about our birds. The rust-back ones fly to the north and west, navigating, the current theory goes, by the stars in the night sky. By the constellations in the night sky, they find their way. In making the guess, this salmonberry bird we are talking about lived in Bolivia, one of the countries I found kind of on that map. Our bird flies 6,000 miles in the dark over the course of a month or two, landing in bushes and trees to rest and feed during the day. She arrives around the end of May, sometimes returning to the very backyard that she was born to. This fact is enough to marvel at in and of itself. It's a thing of mystery and awe. And it happens year after year after year. As we focus on renewal and rebirth this spring season, the question that keeps tugging at me is, why do these salmonberry birds trust this tug, this instinct, this nudge? How do they have enough trust to launch their tiny bodies into the air toward a new place? What causes the birds to decide that whatever risk they might face, whatever dangers the changes might bring, it is worth the risk? The upheaval, the need for change and renewal is worth it. Sometimes I wonder if we feel that same nudge, that same tug, that great mystery that guides the migratory paths of these birds, perhaps tugs within us, tells us it's time to fling ourselves into the air, to risk the danger of change for the fresh life that could be ours. Perhaps our environments have become too stale, not life-giving enough. Perhaps we've gained all we can from our current setting and need to see new horizons. Perhaps there is no longer the nutrition and care that we first found when we landed in our current setting. Perhaps there's no reason we can discern, but we know, we feel that tug that tells us it is time to take flight. But I think many of us are not like the salmonberry bird. We do not always launch ourselves into a time of renewal when spirit or intuition tells us it is time. Unlike the millions of birds overhead tonight, we decide that the upheaval, the need for change and renewal, is not worth it. It's scary up there, flying in the dark. It's terrifying finding your pathway forward, leaving the comfortable and familiar behind. And so many of us decide to ignore this nudge, to press down Spirit's call, to bypass our intuition. We use logic to trap ourselves where we are. We cannot see the way forward, so we do not launch into flight, into the unknown night sky. When birds ignore this urging, individually they become more vulnerable to the predators that remain. They miss the opportunity to breed and nest and bring forward new life. But if they were to ignore this urging on a grand scale, calamity would result. I don't think we even understand all of the processes that are triggered by their migration, but I imagine it's massive. I think it might be the same for us. Individually, when we pay attention to Spirit telling us it is time to spread our wings and fly and find new life elsewhere, when we listen to the nudging in our hearts to seek renewal and change, it breathes life into us. It is life-giving, listening to and responding to this call, even in the midst of danger. But when we trust in our sense of intuition and broader mystery that renewal is needed collectively, we shape the world. We change the earth. We, with our individual responses to change, our yes to Spirit nudging us, in turn effect global changes that we cannot foresee. We create a river of change, responding to Spirit's call in our individual lives, but transforming our collective lives. What are the ways, I wonder, that God is speaking into your life right now? What new visions might our church be feeling the nudge toward if we listened? What new directions are we all being collectively beckoned to? How are you being beckoned into the night sky toward renewal and change? I invite us all into a moment of silent reflection on these questions. Let us pay attention for a moment to the way that mystery is moving around us, shaping our world and shaping us. Let us attend to the ways in which we are being beckoned. For if the salmonberry can fly on faith, so can we.